social programs, safety nets that would actually encourage women and provide for economic growth. Then I just want to call here one person who, to me, represents extraordinarily the spirit of resilience and the use of technology. And her name is Maximiliana. She's an old farmer of Peru, on the Andean plateaus of Peru, in an area of Peru where most men died because of the terrorist war, and where by sheer resilience and determined to actually stay there and grow vegetables, guinea pigs, farm them and sell them, she was actually able to do that because the financial transactions that she had to conduct when she was selling vegetable and guinea pigs were conducted through cell phones and enabled her to actually have a living, develop her little business and survive in that environment. So that's what I remember from Latin America, if I may. In the US, in the last 5 years, what I think comes to my mind is what I call the long march to the reform of the IMF. And I think that I had countless breakfast meetings, lunches, meetings, attending all sorts of events to actually convince the members of Congress in the United States that reforming the IMF, making sure that the underrepresented countries were better represented, was actually worth their vote. It took me 4 years, but last December, the US Congress finally ratified the reform of the IMF that gives underrepresented countries a much better representation and actually doubled the quota of the IMF, which gives us, massive capital to help countries in difficulties. If I move across to another continent, another region, the first woman that comes to my mind is actually Angela Merkel. Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, who's been in power for 10 years now, embodies, in my view at best, again, the resilience, the moral principles by which she stands, and the faith in a Europe that is an extraordinary democratic construction from many corners of economic developments, and where sometimes she had to face loneliness in the face of very difficult situations, many nights in Brussels, where she worked together with others, and certainly myself included, on Greece, but also more recently on issues such as the inclusion of the United Kingdom in Europe. Moving across, there is one key memory for me, and it's very familiar to you, and that's Aung San Suu Kyi. Aung San Suu Kyi, this extraordinary woman from Myanmar, who sacrificed just about everything that we all care about in order to save her country, save her people, and make sure that there could be human rights respected in a place where it wasn't necessarily the case. Two final ones that I want to mention. A couple. One is the governor of the Central Bank of Ukraine, and the other one is the Minister of Economy of Ukraine. These two women, with great courage, are trying to financially, economically, monetarily, to keep their country afloat and to make sure that it will actually thrive in the face of huge adversity from all sorts of viewpoints. For those of you who know Ukraine a little bit, you can imagine what they're facing. Trying to stay straight, trying to stand tall, and trying to take the country further. And the last person is one who will be familiar to Queen Rania. About a year and a half ago, I visited the Zaatari camp, which is an extraordinary example of what a country like Jordan can do for refugees, for neighbors, for people who are on the go and who have no place to go. And I'll never forget that quite old woman from Syria who was there struggling and who had lost husbands, sons, who was there with 2 daughters with pretty much nothing. And she grabbed my hand and she said, "Please help me." I said, "You know, you head of the IMF, all you can do is help countries which have balance of payment issues. You can provide policy advice, you can provide technical assistance." I said, "What can we do?" And she said, "I want to go back to Syria." So I asked about her and the situation, and she had no house left, nothing left but rubbles. And I said, "Well, what's the point?" She said, "I want to touch the ground of my country again." And I said, "How can we help?" She said, "I hope you and other people from the international community will help reconstruct Syria, put infrastructure in place so that we can, yet again, touch the land of Syria and be at home." So those are the women I can think of.
Well, so if I hear you, men have completely disappeared from history. I'm here to defend men. Joking. Okay.
I'll tell you what men can do, because you asked me about the future. I think in a current economic situation where that I've called the new mediocre, where everything that should go up is tepid or stable or down, and everything that should go down actually goes up. I think there are lots and lots of policymakers around the world who are men in the main, who could do a lot if they were taking the right decisions.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm glad you mentioned Aung San Suu Kyi, because I remember the session we had in Myanmar with the Women's Forum, and it was a great memory. Actually, I remember this talking about men and women. I remember this very, very moving speech she made on the morning, because Nelson Mandela had passed away during the night.
Yes.
And it was a moment we can't invent. Thank you very much. So, but all right, you spend a lot of time in Europe. You travel a lot. What's your look at Europe at the moment? I mean, we see that we are struggling, literally struggling, even Angela Merkel, with the immigration. We see Mr. Cameron bargaining for a Brexit, or to avoid a Brexit, and his friend Boris Johnson immediately saying that he was going to fight against his position. Europe is an amazing construction. It's a difficult one. What's your view on Europe?
Unfinished business, really. You know, as I said, it's an extraordinary construction. It's started on the rubbles of war, destructions, killing, millions of people having been at each other's throats for years. And it is now facing a lot of internal issues, and it has difficulties managing external shocks. So what can I say? That in a way it is very much at a crossroad where it has to decide collectively whether it wants to finish the job, continue developing, working, integrating better from, you know, if I look at the economic sphere, from a fiscal, from a banking, from a regulatory point of view, but also from a political point of view. Where does it go further? What common voice does it have? And from a humanitarian as well as political point of view, what collective position does it take in relation to countries such as Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon, which are facing the hardship of a war that is taking place at their border? And what is the common position that is adopted in that respect? While at the same time, and there are some politicians here from Europe, I know certainly one from France is here, that are struggling with internal domestic issues, where people essentially say, you know, we are within our territory, within our borders, let's make sure that we keep that space healthy and safe, but let's not be too adventurous. So that's an issue.
After the 2008 crisis, which really hit us all very hard and was threatening the global financial system, we thought we were in a global recovery. But the beginning of the year has been extremely volatile, to say the least. Markets have been very volatile. Oil prices seem to be also quite volatile. If you sit back a bit, how would you say we are still in a global recovery, or?
I would say that we are in a tepid recovery, and in that new mediocre that I've referred to. Tepid recovery because, you know, the global economy has grown by 3.1% last year. Our forecast for this year is a bit more than 3%, and 2017 a little higher than 2016. So it is growth. But it's tepid growth because the recovery that we're seeing in the United States, in Europe, a little bit in Japan as well, could be better, could be bigger. And if you compare current growth to potential output, which is what normally the economy should deliver, it is less. If we look at the emerging market economies, apart from India, which is doing pretty well, and we can come back if you want to India as to why it's doing better, but the other emerging market economies are either slowing down deliberately, like China, or in a pretty weak position, whether it's Russia, whether it's Brazil, whether it's South Africa. Those countries are struggling, and both Russia and Brazil will be in negative territory this year, and who knows what it will be next year.
Yeah.
The low-income countries, as well as the commodity producers, particularly the oil exporters, are facing a completely new reality, where the price of commodities, essentially oil, but also metals, food, are going down and have gone down significantly to actually change and disrupt the business model of those countries, which some of them are addressing well. But it's a really new reality that countries are dealing with at the moment.
I heard you just say that China was voluntarily slowing down.
Yeah.
Are we witnessing a soft or a hard landing in China?
We don't believe that, we at the IMF don't believe that China is going to have a hard landing. We see it as a deliberate transition. You know, the leaders of China call it moving from quantity to quality growth, but it's also a big transition of business model from, essentially moving from heavy manufacturing to lighter manufacturing and a lot of more services, moving from investing to much more consuming, and being a bit less predominantly export-driven. If you couple that, which really touches on the fundamentals of the economy of China, together with a new mechanism to determine exchange rate, a new approach to governance, because clearly leadership has decided to tackle corruption across the board. The leader has talked about the tigers and the flies. See, you combine all these changes, all these massive transitions, and obviously you move from what was a double-digit growth about 5-6 years ago to something that we see this year at probably 6.3% and probably going to 6% next year. So that's why I'm saying, when I say transitions, multi-layered transitions, but deliberately so, because those are decisions that have been made by the Chinese authorities in order to move towards a slower, but let's just pause for a second. How many countries around the world would like to have 6% growth?
Many.
Quite a few.
Many.
So it is slower. It is having an impact on, you know, the import of raw materials, the import of iron ore, the import of oil, not so much actually. But it's still growth.
Okay, just to go back to what you mentioned through the lens of women, political instability and insecurity. I mean, we are really witnessing in the Middle East and Africa, Syria, Iraq, Libya, to name a few, a growing instability. How can governments, international institutions like the one you manage and other organizations try to bring and reestablish some kind of stability first and maybe peace?
Well, I wish we were in the business of peace, but we are not. Having said that...
You can contribute, maybe.
I was just going there. I believe that economic stability, for people to have a job, for young students to know that they have a future, for economy to develop well-being, happiness. You know, the Emirates has a Minister of Happiness, and that's not, you know, for the sake of making headlines. It's deliberate, and it's a particular look at what growth and societies are made of. I think the economic issues have to be at the table. We cannot stop the warriors. We cannot bring truce. But certainly we can help with good economic policies, with good governance, with capacity building, with a state that actually works for the benefit of people, that collects tax, that organizes public spending in an efficient way for countries, that finances infrastructure projects where it's needed. And that has to be at the same table as those who have to also talk to each other, mediate conflicts, and try to restore peace. So my take on this, and you know, if you ask me what would be my hope for the next 5 years, is that the IMF, instead of being, as we often are, and as we have to continue being, in a remedial mode. In other words, we called into action when the country is in absolute crisis, when the balance of payment is in a disaster situation. Instead of that, if we can be more active in prevention mode, in other words, alerting countries when they're heading in a direction where it's going to really create difficult economic situation. And if we can also be in a collaborative mode, operating with other international organizations, operating with, I know it's overused, but the coalition of the willings, when the purpose is to restore stability, security, and peace. I think we should be also at that table.
Thank you. Switching to a place where you are always a guest star, if not purely a star, the World Economic Forum in Davos, where you go every year. What's your take on the discussions that took place this year, a few weeks ago actually, on the fourth industrial revolution? What are the key challenges and opportunities that the technology brings about? Why are maybe not enough women interested in science and technology?
There are two, I mean, in the economic sciences at the moment, you have this big debate. Some economic scientists contend that apart from electricity and house appliances, such as the washing machine and other things like that, there has not been any major breakthrough technological inventions. There are not that many of them, but they're quite vocal. Because they say, you know, okay, well, you're telling me about this IT revolution. Well, it's still a telephone, and wouldn't you give up a telephone, whereas you wouldn't give up on electricity? So that's the view they take. You then have another group of economists who are saying that if you combine artificial intelligence, 3D printing, biotechnologies, nanotechnologies, quantum computing, plus the determination and ambition of some leaders to go to Mars, for instance, as in the Emirates. That is going to produce massive changes that we can hardly anticipate. Because we can probably anticipate in isolation what they will bring about. But combined together, we don't really know for certain how massive an impact it will have. I belong to the second category. The unfortunate thing, though, is that we're not certain exactly what impact it will have on jobs, on the labor market, on the well-being of people. What I'm certain of, and certainly from the IMF point of view, we're going to try to participate in that, is that it will require massive investment in education. Because as technology can operate as a bridge, as you have farmers in remote areas that can actually understand better what the weather forecast is going to be, what market prices are expected. You can also have this big digital device that was coined a few years ago, but on a much broader basis. And if all, including us, the women, we do not have the education level, we do not understand how, blockchain technology is going to help in the financial world. If my personal time is past, I think I will not ever be able to do it unless I really decide to put time into it.
There are very good online courses.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you about that.
They are free.
Yes,
yeah.
But I know I could try to learn coding in 48 hours. I'm not sure that I have the ability to do that. But
I'm sure you have,
if all our children,
I'm not sure it's very useful to you.
And all those prepared to work actually go there and, learn coding, as I think is taught in Dubai and various other cities in the Emirates. I think then we are in a better position to be the friends of technology, or for whom technology is going to be a friend and not a foe. But I think we need to be really careful to avoid that possible divide and that sort of exclusion that would result from education being short on those issues. Speaking of online courses, for those of you who would like to know how to calculate a debt sustainability analysis, who would like to know more about public finance management, who would like to know more about eliminating subsidies that are hurting both the planet and fiscal revenues, the IMF actually is online on MOOCs, provides free courses, and we've had over 4,500 officials from all over the world, predominantly in low-income countries, actually graduating through those courses and having access to the bags of knowledge that exists in this institution. So we do embrace technology as well.
I'll connect tomorrow. No, I mean, this is a great advantage of technology. So much knowledge and teaching is available for free. Now, you've got to be connected, of course. And that's where the digital divide might happen. I know it's very close to your heart. Africa, as we know, by the way, is the place on Earth which is going to see its population double in the next generation, 25, 30 years, from about a billion people to 2 billion. I mean, if we see what is happening today, and we can hope that it's going to improve, how are those governments going to provide enough education, jobs, to help and create a good enough environment, or immigration is going to increase like crazy?
It's a truism and it's almost conventional wisdom, but when you fly over the African continent, or when you see a map of the world, you see lights everywhere, except in Africa. Well, in many parts of Africa. So that gives us one message. If there is no power, and if there is no reliability of power, there will be no development. So I think it starts with good infrastructure projects that actually enable the development of people, provide education, provide access to water, reduce the time that women spend fetching waters and fetching woods and doing all these things. So that's point number one, infrastructure. But infrastructure requires investment. And for money actually to go to a particular destination, people have to be confident that there are in place governance principles, efficiency of public spending that guarantees that the money is actually going to go to those projects for which it is intended. So it's a double quest that needs to really keep African authorities and all investors and authorities at the international level busy, making sure that the governance is in place, that good public spending rules are respected, and that money flows towards the African territories so that there is power that can facilitate and enable development. This is sort of rock bottom basis for economic development to take place. After that, I can only remember of the founder of Heineken, who was flying over the world and deciding where to set up a brewery depending on how much population there was on the ground. All those of you who are business leaders know that you do not develop, you do not invest, you do not create jobs unless you have a market. It's the demand side of the economic relationship that is actually going to drive those decisions. And there is no doubt in my mind that with the development that we are likely to see in Africa, there will be markets. But the infrastructure of those markets, both at the hard level and at the soft level, need to be sorted out. I know I'm being blunt, but if we're not blunt here...
I think governance is a major problem on this continent. I think you're right to be blunt. There are a few exceptions, of course, but...
Yeah.
I said when we started that you are a role model for a lot of women, and rightly so. Did you have, two questions, did you have a role model yourself? And what were the moments in your political or other lives and, where you really had to fight hard to find your place?
Well, yes, I think we all walk in life with role models. Certainly, my role model was my mother, and like many others, I had a difficult relationship with my mother, and I think only learned a little bit better, what it was to be a mother when I became a mother myself. But yeah, she was a role model, being a widow at the age of 38 and having to raise 4 nasty children, including myself, and being a professional and an accomplished woman. Yes, she was very much a role model. Then I had professional role models in my life as well. The first person that I worked with was a single female partner in a law firm in the late 70s, where women were not partners in law firms. Women were assistants. They were corporate support. They were eventually associates, but they were not partners in law firms. So in those days, she certainly was my role model, and a woman who taught me a few things about how to keep both your head down and to stand tall at the same time.
A few other moments in life where you really had to fight. I remember.
I think we have to fight all the time. I mean, I was really thrilled to listen to the president of the parliament here talk about the dream and the fact that we should have dreams, and I think she was right. But to make those dreams come through, I think we have to. I'm not sure that I would say fight, because I'm not sure that I like very much the sort of the warrior analogies and the violence associated with the fighting. But we have to engage, and we have to be firm, and we have to make our point and stand for ourselves without necessarily being a threat or being aggressive towards other people. But I think it's a day-to-day job, and I think that it will, it might stay that way. And we have to hang together in doing that.
Okay, yeah, maybe it's time to take a question from the floor. Do we have questions? We can't see very well from here.
I can see your hand right there, in front of me.
Okay, there's one over there. There's another one over there. Microphone. There's certainly one over there. Can we bring a microphone? Yeah, over there.
It's coming.
Yeah. Bonjour, Madame Christine Lagarde. My name is Leila Van Den Abel. I'm from Total and seconded to ADNOC as R&D Partnership Manager. My question is, if you had one piece of advice to give us as women in industry to climb the ladder, to break the glass ceiling, what would it be? Thank you.
I would say pick a champion. Because if you're asking me that question, you are either somewhere on the ladder, but you're not yet at the top. So I've traveled in my life in various professions. I think you have to first of all stand for yourself, not be submissive, not be overly aggressive necessarily, but I think it's helpful to actually pick a champion. Because I believe that things do not happen in isolation, and I believe that no matter how determined you are, how willing you are, you need to have others with you. So whether you pick a champion laterally at your level, so that you have the force of being together, or you pick a champion who is above on the ladder, but form a team. And that's how I believe that progress can be made. And I tell you, the situations, the countries, the worlds in which I have seen much progress for women empowerment are those worlds and those environments where at the top somebody takes the view that everyone can succeed. Not just some, because they look like you, but everyone can succeed. And I don't think that you can actually easily replace that. But failing that person at the top who says, I want everybody to succeed, then try to form alliances and find them anywhere on the ladder to actually move along. And once you've broken the glass ceiling, make sure that you keep those networks, and that you yourself become the champion of others. Because I'm not going to repeat what Madeleine Albright said, because it's highly controversial at the moment, and I can understand why it is. But once you're up there, be the champion of others, and you will have this incredible multiplier effect that will bring more and more of those that also in time need a champion.
A very, very quick question. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you very much for arranging this chance for us to speak, to meet great leaders. Basically, first, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Sonia. I'm Emirati national, and I come from DP World, a business unit called World Security. And in our company, we believe on women empowerment. But we have more to give. And I want you from, as a great leader, is there a way where governments can do more for us to not be, powerful only in small units, to contribute more? Because really our government have given us a lot. And we have a lot of gratitude to our Sheikh, Sheikh Khalifa, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid. They have done a lot, and they are working hard to support us women. And this is seen by the whole world. But we want to give more. It's not only being a head of department or a CEO in a company. What governments can do more to get more power, more results from the women's? Thank you.
Okay, I think...
Very quickly.
What did you say?
No, very quickly. Over.
So I can answer the question now?
You can, of course.
So, first of all, I would note and acknowledge with you that this government, thanks to the founder of the state and his wife, is doing an incredibly great job empowering, pushing women. So what it can do itself is certainly set standards for other governments elsewhere in the world where the same is not true. And I think that there is, you know, a story to be told around the world about the achievements of the Emirates as far as women empowerment is concerned. Now, we have done quite a bit of work on trying to understand what can help women from a policy point of view. And we have interestingly found out that, for instance, studying about 143 countries around the world, 143 countries, 90% of them have actually in their legal system, sometimes in their constitution, rules that stop women from having the same rights as men, from having the same perspective as men, and from being able to actually achieve their potential. 90% out of 143 countries, and that cuts across advanced, emerging, and low-income countries. So that's point number one. Those rules need to be changed. Point number two, in terms of education, a lot is being done here, and if 70% of the women are in if the higher education level includes 70% of women, it's quite to the credit of Emirati women. In many other countries around the world, education is not as accessible to women, to young girls, as it is to young boys. That's a critical point that governments around the world need to remedy. Third point, whenever women want to achieve something, they need to be able to access finance. And when you look at SMEs, startups, companies around the world, the access to finance for women is a lot less than what it is for men. So I would say in those three areas, policymakers can do a lot to bring better access to finance, better education, and certainly a legal system that allows equal opportunities to all. That's as far as governments are concerned. I would like to just mention one more thing, which is actually a real story, whether it delivers fruit to be seen. But the Prime Minister of Japan, realizing, just like was mentioned earlier, that for demographic reasons, it made a lot of economic sense to empower Japanese women, actually put a lot of more financing in the Japanese budget for childcare centers. Will that encourage Japanese women to go to work, to make the choice they want to make, to be seen, because there are cultural impediments as well. But the infrastructure for parents to be able to both discharge their parental duties as well as to go about life in the way they want is also critically important.
Thank you so much, Christine Lagarde. I'm afraid we have to wrap up.